Everybody is watching closely now, and the energy between Sonia Uche and Pearl Watts has become one of those things you can't ignore anymore, not because anyone said anything directly, but because of the little things, the subtle shifts, the moments that feel a bit too intentional to be random, and fans have started piecing it all together like a puzzle, and what they're seeing is a pattern that feels emotional, calculated, and honestly a bit tense. Because when two strong personalities exist in the same space, especially in Nollywood where attention is everything, even silence can start sounding loud, and what people are calling jealousy isn't coming from one big dramatic moment, it's coming from small repeated actions that slowly build a story in the minds of viewers. And that's exactly what's happening here, because if you've been paying attention, you'll notice that every time Pearl Watts is having a moment, whether it's her beauty trending, her chemistry in movies gaining attention, or fans hyping her presence, there's always this subtle shift in energy around Sonia Uche that people are beginning to question, not aggressively, but curiously, like they're trying to understand what's really going on beneath the surface. And the truth is, in an industry where attention is currency, even the smallest emotional reactions can be amplified into something bigger than they really are. But fans don't just look at one moment, they look at patterns. And once patterns start forming, that's when narratives begin, and right now the narrative forming online is that Sonia might be reacting emotionally to Pearl's rising spotlight in a way that feels indirect but noticeable, and it shows up in ways that are not obvious at first glance but become clear when you connect the dots, like timing, expressions, interactions, and even absence, because sometimes what someone doesn't do speaks louder than what they do, and fans have noticed moments where Pearl Watts is being celebrated heavily, but Sonia seems distant, not involved, or just not matching that same energy. And while that could mean anything, the internet doesn't leave things unexplored. They start asking questions, and those questions slowly turn into assumptions, and those assumptions start shaping how people see their dynamic. And that's where the idea of emotional jealousy comes in, not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, subtle, and expressed through behavior rather than words. And one thing about emotional reactions is that they don't always come out in obvious ways. Sometimes it's in the way someone avoids eye contact, the way they respond less enthusiastically, or even the way they choose to show up or not show up in certain moments, and fans believe they've seen hints of that when it comes to Sonia around Pearl, especially during times when Pearl is clearly the center of attention, and it creates this feeling that maybe, just maybe, there's an internal comparison happening, because let's be real, both women are talented, both are beautiful, and both are building strong fan bases, so naturally, comparisons are going to happen whether they like it or not. And when fans start comparing, it can create pressure, and pressure can lead to emotional responses, and those responses don't always come out clean or neutral. Sometimes they come out as subtle competition, or energy shifts that people pick up on without anyone saying a word. And another thing fans have pointed out is how interactions between them sometimes feel slightly off, not necessarily negative, but not as warm or effortless as people expect from colleagues in the same space. And that slight difference is enough to get people talking, because in Nollywood, fans are used to seeing strong friendships, collaborations, and public support. So when something feels even a little bit different, it stands out, and people begin to interpret it. And interpretation is powerful because once fans believe they're seeing something, they start looking for more evidence to support that belief, and suddenly every small moment becomes proof of something bigger, and in this case, the idea that Sonia might be using emotional distance or subtle reactions as a way to cope with or express jealousy has become one of those narratives that keeps growing, especially because Pearl Watts has been having a noticeable rise in attention recently. And with attention comes spotlight, and with spotlight comes comparison, and not everyone handles that the same way, and fans believe Sonia's way of handling it might be more internal, more emotional, and expressed in ways that aren't direct but still felt, like choosing when to engage, when to stay silent, or how to react in shared spaces. And it's interesting because nothing here is loud or dramatic. There's no clear conflict, no public argument, no direct shade, but somehow the silence itself has become the story. And people are reading into that silence as something meaningful, something intentional, something emotional, and that's what makes this whole situation so fascinating. Because it's not about what was said, it's about what wasn't said, it's not about obvious actions, it's about subtle ones, and fans love that kind of mystery because it gives them something to analyze, something to debate, something to turn into content, and the more they talk about it, the more real it starts to feel, even if there's no confirmation. And that's the power of perception, because once people believe a certain dynamic exists, it begins to shape how they see every interaction moving forward. And every future moment between Sonia Uche and Pearl Watts will now be viewed through that lens, whether it's fair or not. And another angle fans are exploring is the idea that emotional jealousy doesn't always come from negativity. Sometimes it comes from insecurity, comparison, or even the pressure to maintain relevance in a fast-moving industry. And if that's the case, then what people are interpreting as bringing someone down might actually just be someone navigating their own emotions in a space where everything is public, and that adds another layer to the conversation because it makes it less about blame and more about understanding. But the internet doesn't always lean toward understanding. It leans toward storytelling, and right now the story being told is one of subtle tension, quiet competition, and emotional reactions that feel too consistent to ignore. And whether that story is accurate or not, it's definitely engaging because people are invested, they're watching closely, they're analyzing every look, every interaction, every absence, and turning it into something bigger. And that's why this dynamic keeps trending, because it feels unfinished, it feels unresolved. It feels like there's more beneath the surface that hasn't been fully revealed yet. And until something clear happens, fans will keep speculating, keep interpreting, keep building narratives from the smallest details, and that's how a simple shift in energy can turn into a full-blown online discussion about jealousy, emotions, and silent competition. And at the end of the day, what makes this situation so interesting isn't just the idea of jealousy itself. It's how subtle it is, how quiet it is, how it lives in the small moments rather than big ones, because those are the moments that feel real, that feel human, that feel relatable. And that's why people can't stop talking about it, because it's not just drama, it's emotion, it's perception, it's storytelling. And whether Sonia Uche is intentionally doing anything or not, the way fans are interpreting her actions in relation to Pearl Watts has already created a narrative that's hard to ignore, and now everyone is watching, waiting, and wondering what the next moment will reveal, because in situations like this, even the smallest interaction can either confirm everything people believe or completely change the story, and that unpredictability is exactly what keeps people hooked.